The late evening sun cast long shadows across the quiet suburban street in Los Angeles. Marcus Williams sat in his sleek black Mercedes parked outside a small convenience store. He had just finished a grueling 14-hour day on set, filming scenes for his upcoming blockbuster movie. His body ached with exhaustion, but he needed to grab some water and snacks before heading home to his family. Marcus was no ordinary person. At 35 years old, he had become one of Hollywood's most beloved actors. His journey from a struggling theater performer in Chicago to an A-list celebrity had been nothing short of remarkable. Magazines featured him on their covers. Talk shows competed to have him as a guest. Children recognized him on the streets and asked for autographs. His latest films had earned over $500 million worldwide, and critics praised his talent and versatility. But right now, Marcus just wanted to get home. He pulled out his phone and texted his wife, telling her he would be there in 20 minutes. His 2 young daughters were probably already asleep, but he hoped to catch them before bedtime. He stepped out of his car wearing a simple gray hoodie and jeans. Despite his fame, Marcus always tried to dress casually when he was not working. He valued his privacy and the rare moments when he could just be a regular person. The convenience store was nearly empty. An elderly woman browsed the magazine section while a teenager stood by the refrigerators, deciding between different drinks. Marcus grabbed a basket and walked through the aisles, picking up bottles of water, some fruit, and a few protein bars. The store clerk, a young man in his early 20s, did a double take when he recognized Marcus. His eyes widened with excitement. "Oh my God, are you Marcus Williams?" the clerk whispered, trying not to draw attention. Marcus smiled warmly and put a finger to his lips. "Guilty as charged, but let's keep it between us, yeah?" The clerk nodded enthusiastically, his hands trembling slightly as he rang up the items. "My girlfriend and I loved your last movie. You were incredible. Could I maybe get a quick picture?" "Of course, man," Marcus replied. He posed for a selfie with the starstruck clerk, who thanked him repeatedly. After paying, Marcus grabbed his bags and walked back toward his car. The street was quiet now, with only a few vehicles passing by occasionally. As Marcus reached his Mercedes, he noticed a police car slowly driving down the street. He thought nothing of it and opened his car door, placing the shopping bags on the passenger seat. But something made him glance back. The police car had stopped about 30 feet behind his vehicle. 2 officers sat inside, and one of them was staring directly at him. Marcus felt a familiar knot forming in his stomach. Despite his success, despite his fame, despite everything he had accomplished, moments like these always brought back memories he tried to forget. He remembered being stopped by police as a teenager in Chicago, being questioned and searched for no reason. He remembered the fear and humiliation, but surely things would be different now. He was a famous actor. He drove an expensive car. He had done nothing wrong. The police car door opened and an officer stepped out. He was a tall man in his late 40s with a stern expression. His name tag read Officer Brennan. Marcus watched as the officer adjusted his belt and began walking toward him. The second officer remained in the car, watching through the windshield. "Good evening, officer," Marcus said politely, forcing a smile. "Is there a problem?" Officer Brennan did not return the smile. His eyes scanned Marcus from head to toe, lingering on the hoodie. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone cold and accusatory. Marcus felt confused by the question. "I just bought some things from the store. I'm heading home now." "This your car?" Brennan gestured toward the Mercedes with his chin. "Yes, sir, it's my car." Marcus tried to keep his voice steady, but he could feel his heart starting to race. "You got proof of that?" The officer's hand moved closer to his belt, resting near his weapon. Marcus swallowed hard. "Officer, I'm Marcus Williams. I'm an actor. This is definitely my car. I can show you my license and registration if you need to see them." Brennan's expression did not change. If anything, his eyes became harder. "I don't care who you say you are. I asked you a question. Show me your ID and vehicle registration now." The way he said now sent a chill down Marcus's spine. There was something wrong here, something deeply wrong. Marcus slowly reached for his back pocket where he kept his wallet. "I'm just getting my wallet, officer." "It's in my back pocket." "Keep your hands where I can see them," Brennan suddenly shouted, taking a step back. His hand now gripped his gun, though he had not yet drawn it. Marcus immediately raised both hands in the air. Okay. My hands are up. I'm not reaching for anything. You asked for my ID, it's in my back pocket. Please let me get it slowly. By now the commotion had drawn attention. The store clerk had come to the door, watching with growing concern. A couple walking their dog across the street had stopped. A woman in a nearby house peeked through her curtains. Marcus could see all of this in his peripheral vision, but his focus remained locked on Officer Brennan and the hand that gripped that gun. I said, "Keep your hands up." Brennan shouted again, and this time he drew his weapon, pointing it directly at Marcus. Time seemed to slow down. Marcus stared at the barrel of the gun pointed at his chest. His mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. He thought about his wife, about his daughters, about how they would cope if something happened to him. He thought about all the other men who had found themselves in this exact situation, men who did not make it home, men whose names became hashtags, men whose final moments were captured on video and shared across the internet. "Officer, please," Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly. "I have done nothing wrong. I was just buying some water. That's my car. I'm Marcus Williams. You can look me up. Please just put the gun down." The store clerk ran back inside and grabbed his phone, starting to record. The couple with the dog also pulled out their phones. In today's world, everyone knew how important it was to document these encounters. Lives depended on evidence, on witnesses, on proof that something terrible had happened. Officer Brennan seemed to realize he was being watched. His jaw clenched, but the gun remained pointed at Marcus. "Get on the ground, now!" Marcus felt tears stinging his eyes, but he blinked them back. He was terrified, but he also felt a burning sense of injustice. He had worked so hard to get where he was. He had overcome poverty, discrimination, and countless obstacles. He had become someone. And yet here he was on a quiet suburban street, with a gun pointed at him for the crime of buying water while black. "I'm getting on the ground," Marcus said clearly, making sure the people recording could hear him. "I am cooperating. I have done nothing wrong." He slowly lowered himself to his knees, then to his stomach, spreading his arms out to the sides. The pavement was rough against his face, and he could smell oil and dirt. Marcus lay on the ground, his cheek pressed against the cold pavement. He could hear Officer Brennan approaching, his boots scraping against the concrete. Every muscle in Marcus's body was tense. He kept his hands spread wide, making sure there could be no misunderstanding about his intentions. The gun was still pointed at him. He could feel it, even though he could not see it from his position on the ground. "Don't move," Brennan commanded, his voice sharp and filled with authority that bordered on aggression. The second officer had now exited the police car. This one was younger, perhaps in his early 30s, with a nervous expression. His name tag identified him as Officer Martinez. He approached cautiously, looking between his partner and Marcus with obvious uncertainty. "Brennan, what's going on?" Martinez asked quietly. "Suspicious individual, possible stolen vehicle," Brennan replied without taking his eyes off Marcus. "I'm securing the scene." Marcus wanted to scream that nothing about this was right, that he was the victim here, not a criminal. But he knew that speaking out of turn could be dangerous. He had heard too many stories, seen too many videos, attended too many funerals, so he stayed silent and still, barely breathing. Martinez knelt beside Marcus and began patting him down, checking for weapons. His touch was less aggressive than Marcus had expected, almost apologetic. "Sir, do you have any weapons on you? Anything that could hurt me?" "No, officer," Marcus replied, his voice muffled against the pavement. "I have a wallet in my back pocket with my ID. I have my phone in my front pocket. That's all." Martinez carefully removed the wallet and phone, handing them to Brennan. The older officer flipped open the wallet, and Marcus watched from his position on the ground as Brennan's expression changed. First confusion, then recognition, and finally something that looked like panic. The driver's license clearly showed Marcus's name, his photo and his address in one of Los Angeles's most exclusive neighborhoods. Behind the license were several credit cards, all in the name of Marcus Williams. There was also a SAG-AFTRA card, identifying him as a member of the Screen Actors Guild. "Oh, Jesus," Martinez muttered, having looked over Brennan's shoulder. He had recognized Marcus now. "That's Marcus Williams, the actor, from the Titan Force movies." Brennan's face had gone pale, but he tried to maintain his authority. "Doesn't matter who he is. He was acting suspicious. I was buying water." Marcus finally raised his voice his patient's way. "Earring thin. I was just buying water and going home to my family. There is nothing suspicious about that. By now, a small crowd had gathered. About a dozen people stood at various distances, all holding their phones up, recording everything. The store clerk had come outside with another customer. The couple with the dog had been joined by neighbors who had heard the shouting. They all watched in shocked silence. A woman in the crowd called out, "That's Marcus Williams. Why are you treating him like this?" "He didn't do anything." Another voice joined in. "This is wrong. Let him go." Brennan looked around, seeming to realize for the first time just how many witnesses there were. His hand finally moved away from his gun and he holstered the weapon, but his face was red with either embarrassment or anger. Marcus could not tell which. "Stand up," Brennan ordered, his voice now lacking the confidence it had before. Marcus slowly pushed himself up from the ground. His hoodie was dirty, covered in dust and small pebbles. His hands were scraped from the rough pavement. He looked at Officer Brennan with a mixture of anger, hurt, and exhaustion. Martinez stepped forward, holding out Marcus's wallet and phone. "Mr. Williams, I apologize for the inconvenience. You're free to go." "Inconvenience?" Marcus took his belongings, his hands shaking with suppressed emotion. "You pointed a gun at me. You made me lie on the ground like a criminal. You humiliated me in front of all these people, and you call it an inconvenience?" Brennan crossed his arms defensively. "You matched the description of a suspect in a recent theft. We were doing our job." "What description?" Marcus demanded, his voice rising. "What suspect?" "There was no theft. You saw a black man in a nice car and assumed I was a criminal. That's what happened here. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise." The crowd murmured in agreement. Several people shouted their support for Marcus. The store clerk called out, "I served him. He paid for everything. There was no problem." Martinez looked deeply uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Sir, you were just doing what?" Marcus interrupted, his emotions finally breaking through. "You were just profiling me? You were just assuming that someone who looks like me couldn't possibly own a car like that. I've worked my entire life to get where I am. I came from nothing. I fought for every opportunity, and still in 2025, I can't buy water without having a gun pointed at me." Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now, and he made no effort to hide them. The crowd had gone silent, witnessing this raw moment of pain and frustration. Several people were crying too, particularly those who understood exactly what Marcus was feeling, because they had experienced similar treatment themselves. A teenage girl in the crowd stepped forward hesitantly. "Mr. Williams, I'm recording all of this. I'll send it to you if you want." Everyone here saw what happened. "We're witnesses," Marcus nodded, trying to compose himself. "Thank you. Yes, please send it to me. All of you, please keep those videos. This needs to be documented." Brennan's expression had shifted from defensiveness to something approaching concern. He seemed to be calculating the consequences of what had just happened. "Look, we can all just move on from this. No harm done. You're free to leave." "No harm done?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Officer, I'm going to go home now. I'm going to hug my wife and kiss my daughters, and then I'm going to decide what to do about this. Because this isn't just about me. This is about every person who looks like me and doesn't have cameras filming when something like this happens. This is about everyone who doesn't have the privilege of being famous, who gets treated this way and has no recourse." He walked back to his Mercedes, his legs feeling weak. The shopping bags were still sitting on the passenger seat, the water bottles visible through the plastic. Such simple items, such an ordinary errand that had turned into a nightmare. As Marcus sat in the driver's seat, his hands gripped the steering wheel. He took several deep breaths, trying to calm his racing heart. Through the windshield, he could see Officer Brennan and Officer Martinez standing by their patrol car. Brennan was speaking urgently into his radio, while Martinez stared at the ground, looking defeated. The crowd had not dispersed. People approached Marcus's car, tapping gently on the window. He rolled it down, and they offered words of support and encouragement. Several asked if he was okay, if he needed anything. Their kindness helped ease some of the trauma he had just experienced. "We got it all on video," a man assured him. "Every second. This won't get swept under the rug." Marcus thanked them, started his car, and slowly drove away. In his rearview mirror, he could see the police officers still standing there, now surrounded by the crowd who were apparently giving them an earful about their behavior. As he drove through the quiet streets toward his home, Marcus's mind raced with thoughts about what had just happened and what would come next. Marcus pulled into his driveway 40 minutes later than he had planned. The house was a beautiful two-story structure with large windows and a well-maintained garden. It was the kind of home he had dreamed about as a child growing up in a cramped apartment in Chicago. But tonight he barely noticed its beauty. His mind was still back on that street, still seeing the barrel of that gun pointed at his chest. The front door opened before he could reach it. His wife, Jennifer, stood in the doorway, her expression immediately shifting from relief to concern when she saw his face. Jennifer was a successful attorney, smart and compassionate, and she had been Marcus's rock through all the ups and downs of his career. "Baby, what happened?" she asked, pulling him inside and closing the door. "You look upset. And why are you so late?" "I was worried." Marcus wrapped his arms around her and held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. For a moment he could not speak. The trauma of the past hour was catching up with him, and his body began to shake. "Marcus, you're scaring me," Jennifer said softly, pulling back to look at his face. "Talk to me. What's wrong?" He told her everything. Every detail of the encounter, from Officer Brennan's initial approach to the gun being pointed at him, to lying face down on the pavement. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears as she listened, her hand covering her mouth in shock. "Oh my God," she whispered when he finished. "Oh my God, Marcus. You could have been killed. Over water. Over nothing." She pulled him close again and they stood in the entryway, holding each other as the weight of what could have happened settled over them. A small voice from the stairs interrupted them. "Daddy?" Marcus looked up to see his 6-year-old daughter, Maya, standing on the staircase in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Her younger sister, 4-year-old Zoe, appeared behind her, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. "Hey, my princesses," Marcus said, quickly wiping his eyes and forcing a smile. "What are you doing up? It's past bedtime." "We heard you come home," Maya said, running down the stairs and hugging his legs. "We wanted to say goodnight." Zoe followed, and Marcus scooped both girls into his arms. He held them close, thinking about how different this night could have ended. He might never have held them again. They might have grown up without a father, all because of one officer's prejudice and fear. Jennifer watched with tears streaming down her face. She knew exactly what Marcus was thinking. After the girls were tucked back into bed, Marcus and Jennifer sat in the living room. His phone had been buzzing constantly for the past 30 minutes. Word was already spreading. "It's going viral," Jennifer said, scrolling through her own phone. "The videos are all over social media. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Everyone's sharing them. Your name is trending." Marcus looked at his phone and saw dozens of messages from his agent, his publicist, his co-stars, his friends, and even people he barely knew. The videos from the scene showed everything clearly. They showed him being cooperative, being respectful, and being threatened with deadly force despite doing nothing wrong. They showed his pain and his tears. They showed his humanity. His publicist, Rachel, had sent several urgent messages asking him to call her immediately. Marcus dialed her number and she answered on the first ring. "Marcus, thank God you're okay," Rachel said, her voice filled with genuine concern. "I've been watching these videos for the past 20 minutes. I'm so sorry this happened to you." "This is horrible." "Thanks, Rachel," Marcus replied tiredly. "I know this is going to be a mess. The press will want statements. There will be questions." "The press is already calling," Rachel confirmed. "Every major news outlet wants to interview you. TMZ, CNN, The Today Show, everyone. But Marcus, you don't have to do anything right now. Take time to process this. Take care of yourself and your family first." Marcus appreciated her concern, but he knew what he needed to do. "No, I want to make a statement tomorrow. I want to talk about this while it's fresh. Because if I don't speak up, nothing changes. This happens to people every single day, and they don't have a platform like I do. I need to use my voice." Jennifer nodded in agreement, squeezing his hand. "Okay," Rachel said. "I'll set something up for tomorrow afternoon. But Marcus, you need to know something. The police department is already responding. They put out a statement saying they're investigating the incident. And there's more. Officer Brennan, the one who pulled the gun on you, he's already been suspended pending investigation." Marcus felt a grim satisfaction at hearing this, but it was not enough. "Suspended with pay, I'm guessing?" "I don't have those details yet," Rachel admitted. "But the public pressure is intense. People are demanding accountability. This isn't going away quietly. After hanging up with Rachel, Marcus spent the next hour reading through the responses on social media. Millions of people had already seen the videos. The reactions were overwhelming. Celebrities, politicians, athletes, and regular people were expressing outrage and support. Many shared their own stories of being profiled and mistreated by police. But there were also defenders of Officer Brennan, people who claimed Marcus must have done something to provoke the response, people who insisted that race had nothing to do with it. These comments hurt almost as much as the original incident. They represented the willful blindness that allowed such injustices to continue. A text message came through from his best friend and co-star David Chen. "Bro, just saw what happened. I'm here for you. Whatever you need. This is beyond messed up. I'm coming over tomorrow." Marcus appreciated the support. David had been his friend since their struggling actor days, and their bond had only grown stronger with success. Having allies, especially those from different backgrounds who were willing to speak up, meant everything. Jennifer brought him a cup of tea and sat beside him on the couch. "What are you thinking?" she asked gently. "I'm thinking about all the times this has happened to me before," Marcus admitted. "When I wasn't famous, when nobody was filming, when I was just another black kid being harassed by cops. And I'm thinking about all the people it happens to every day who don't get justice because nobody cares." "You're going to make a difference," Jennifer said firmly. "Your voice matters, and people are listening." The night wore on, but Marcus could not sleep. He sat in his home office, staring at his computer screen, reading article after article about the incident. The Los Angeles Times had already published a piece. The Washington Post was running a story. International news outlets were picking it up. The video had been viewed over 50 million times across various platforms. Around 3 a.m, an email arrived from an unexpected source. It was from the chief of police for the Los Angeles Police Department. The email expressed regret for what had happened and requested a meeting with Marcus to discuss the incident and potential reforms. Marcus stared at the email for a long time before forwarding it to Jennifer and his lawyer. As dawn broke over Los Angeles, Marcus finally felt exhaustion overtaking his racing mind. He went upstairs and looked in on his sleeping daughters. Maya was curled up with her blanket, peaceful and innocent. Zoe had her thumb in her mouth, her stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. Looking at them, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was going to fight this not just for himself, but for them, so that they could grow up in a world where their father buying water was not seen as a crime. The next afternoon, Marcus sat in front of a camera at a press conference that had been organized quickly but professionally. The room was packed with journalists from every major news outlet. Cameras from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, ABC, and dozens of other networks lined the back wall. Photographers jostled for position. The energy in the room was electric with anticipation. Jennifer sat beside Marcus, her hand resting on his. On his other side sat his attorney, Michael Rodriguez, one of the top civil rights lawyers in the country. Behind them stood Rachel and several members of Marcus's team. David Chen had also come, standing in the back to show his support. Marcus adjusted the microphone in front of him and looked out at the sea of faces. He had performed in front of audiences of thousands, had done countless interviews, but this felt different. This was not about entertainment or promotion. This was about justice and change. "Thank you all for coming," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the emotions churning inside him. "Yesterday evening I experienced something that no person should ever have to experience. I was threatened with deadly force by a police officer for the crime of buying water and driving while black." He paused, letting the words sink in. Several journalists were already typing furiously on their laptops. "I want to be very clear about what happened," Marcus continued. "I was not speeding. I was not breaking any laws. I was cooperative from the very beginning. I identified myself. I followed instructions. And still, Officer James Brennan of the Los Angeles Police Department drew his weapon and pointed it at me. He made me lie face down on the pavement while he decided whether my life had value." Marcus's voice cracked slightly, but he pushed forward. "I am fortunate. I am fortunate that there were witnesses. I am fortunate that people filmed what happened. I am fortunate that I have resources and a platform. But what about all the people who aren't fortunate? What about all the people this happens to every single day who don't have cameras to protect them? What about the ones who didn't make it home to their families?" The room was absolutely silent except for the clicking of camera shutters. Some of the journalists had tears in their eyes. "This is not just about one bad officer," Marcus said. "This is about a system that allows this to happen. This is about the fact that in 2025, the color of my skin is still seen as a threat. I have worked my entire life to be successful, to be respectable, to be someone my daughters can be proud of. And none of it mattered yesterday. None of it protected me from being treated like a criminal." Jennifer squeezed his hand and he squeezed back, drawing strength from her presence. "I want to address Officer Brennan directly," Marcus said, looking straight into the cameras. "You saw me and you made assumptions. You saw my skin color and you saw a threat instead of a human being. Your actions yesterday could have ended my life. My wife could be a widow. My daughters could be fatherless. And for what? Because you were afraid of me? Because you couldn't see past your own prejudices?" Marcus took a deep breath. "But I also want to talk about change. I am not interested in just seeing one officer fired. I want to see real systemic change. I want better training for police officers. I want accountability when officers abuse their power. I want an end to racial profiling. I want a world where my daughters can grow up without fear." He outlined several specific reforms he was calling for, including body cameras for all officers, mandatory bias training, community oversight boards, and stricter consequences for officers who engage in racial profiling or excessive force. His attorney had helped him prepare these points, ensuring they were concrete and actionable. To the Los Angeles Police Department and to police departments across this country, I say this, Marcus's voice grew stronger. The world is watching. People are tired of empty promises and meaningless statements. We need action. We need change. And we need it now. When Marcus finished his statement, the room erupted with questions. Journalists raised their hands and called out, trying to get his attention. Marcus answered several questions, always bringing the conversation back to the larger issues of systemic racism and police reform. One journalist asked if he planned to sue the police department. Michael Rodriguez leaned forward to answer. "We are exploring all legal options. This is not about money. This is about accountability and ensuring this never happens again." Another journalist asked about Officer Brennan specifically. "We have learned that Officer Brennan has been suspended," Marcus replied. "But suspension is not enough. There must be a full investigation, and if that investigation confirms what we all saw in those videos, then he should be terminated and face criminal charges for threatening my life." The press conference lasted nearly an hour. When it was finally over, Marcus felt drained but also empowered. He had used his platform to speak truth to power, and the message was being heard loud and clear. As Marcus and his team left the building, they were met by a group of protesters who had gathered outside. But these were not hostile protesters. They were supporters holding signs that read "Justice for Marcus" and "End Police Brutality" and "Black Lives Matter." When they saw Marcus, they began to cheer and applaud. Marcus stopped and walked over to them, shaking hands and accepting hugs. Many of them shared their own stories of encounters with police, of sons and brothers and fathers who had been mistreated or worse. Marcus listened to each one, understanding that he was now part of a much larger movement. A young black man, probably around 20 years old, approached Marcus with tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he said simply. "Thank you for speaking up. My brother was killed by police 3 years ago. Nobody cared. Nobody filmed it. Nobody believed us when we said he was innocent. But maybe because of you, things will change. Maybe his death won't be for nothing." Marcus embraced the young man, both of them crying. This was why he had to speak up. This was why he could not stay silent. Too many lives had been lost. Too many families had been destroyed. It had to stop. That evening back at home, Marcus watched the news coverage of his press conference. It was the lead story on every major network. His words were being replayed over and over. Pundits were debating the issues he had raised. Politicians were being asked for their responses. The mayor of Los Angeles held her own press conference, promising a full investigation and expressing her commitment to police reform. The governor of California issued a statement supporting Marcus and calling for statewide changes to police training and accountability. Even some members of Congress were weighing in, with several announcing plans to introduce new legislation. But the most significant development came just before midnight. Marcus received a call from his attorney. "Marcus, I just got off the phone with the police chief," Michael said, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. Officer Brennan has been terminated, not suspended, fired, and the department is recommending criminal charges. Marcus sat down, overwhelmed by the news. It had happened so fast. Less than 24 hours after the incident, the officer who had threatened his life was no longer a police officer. Justice had been swift, even if it was only the first step. "This is because of the video," Michael continued, "and because of your press conference. The public pressure was too intense. They couldn't sweep this under the rug. You did this, Marcus. Your voice made the difference." After hanging up, Marcus shared the news with Jennifer. They held each other, crying tears of relief and exhaustion. It was not complete victory. One officer being fired did not fix the entire system. But it was progress. It was accountability. And it was a message that such behavior would not be tolerated. 3 months had passed since that terrible evening outside the convenience store. The world had changed in ways both big and small, and Marcus had been at the center of that change. What started as a traumatic encounter had transformed into a movement for justice, and reformed Officer James Brennan had not only been fired but was now facing criminal charges for assault, with a deadly weapon and civil rights violations. The trial was set to begin in 2 months, and Marcus had already been informed that he would need to testify. The thought of facing Brennan in court filled him with anxiety, but he knew it was necessary. Justice required his participation. The Los Angeles Police Department had undergone significant reforms in the wake of the incident. The new police chief, appointed after the previous one resigned under pressure, had implemented mandatory body cameras for all officers, with severe consequences for any officer who failed to activate their camera during an interaction with the public. The department had also instituted comprehensive bias training and created a civilian oversight board with real power to investigate complaints and recommend discipline. But Marcus's impact had extended far beyond Los Angeles. His story had resonated across the nation and around the world. He had been invited to speak at conferences, universities, and community gatherings. He had met with lawmakers in Washington, D.C., advocating for federal police reform legislation. He had used his celebrity platform to amplify the voices of other victims and their families, people who had experienced similar injustices but lacked the resources to fight back. The entertainment industry had also taken notice. Marcus had been approached by several filmmakers who wanted to tell stories about police brutality and systemic racism, stories that Hollywood had too often ignored or sanitized. He had agreed to produce several of these projects, using his influence to ensure they were told authentically and with respect for the real people who had lived through such trauma. One sunny Saturday morning, Marcus sat in his backyard watching Maya and Zoe play on their swing set. Jennifer brought out 2 cups of coffee and sat beside him. They had developed a new ritual of spending quiet mornings together, cherishing the peaceful moments that they now understood could be taken away in an instant. "David called," Jennifer said. "He wants to know if you're still planning to speak at the march next weekend." Marcus nodded. A major demonstration was planned in downtown Los Angeles, bringing together activists, community leaders, and concerned citizens to demand continued police reform and racial justice. Marcus had agreed to be one of the speakers, alongside several family members of police brutality victims. "I'll be there," Marcus confirmed. "This movement is bigger than me. If my voice can help keep the momentum going, I have to use it." Jennifer smiled and kissed his cheek. "I'm proud of you, not just for speaking up, but for how you've handled all of this with grace and purpose." The trauma of that night had not disappeared. Marcus still had nightmares sometimes, waking up in a cold sweat, seeing that gun pointed at him. He had started seeing a therapist who specialized in trauma, and the sessions were helping. He had learned that healing was not linear, that some wounds took time to close, and that asking for help was a sign of strength, not weakness. His daughters had asked questions about what happened, having heard other kids at school talking about it. Marcus and Jennifer had sat them down and explained in age-appropriate terms about prejudice and injustice. They had tried to balance honesty with protecting their innocence, wanting them to understand the world they lived in without robbing them of their childhood joy. Maya, wise beyond her 6 years, had asked, "Daddy, why was that policeman mean to you?" Marcus had struggled to find the right words. Sometimes people make judgments about others based on what they look like instead of who they really are. It's not right and it's not fair, but it happens. That's why we have to work to change things to make the world better. Like a superhero? Zoe had asked, her eyes wide. Marcus had smiled through his tears. Yes, baby. Like a superhero. We all have to be superheroes for each other. Now, watching his daughters play, Marcus thought about the world he wanted them to inherit. A world where they would not be judged by their skin color. A world where calling the police meant safety, not danger. A world where justice was truly blind and equality was more than just a word. His phone buzzed with a message from the young man he had met outside the press conference. The one whose brother had been killed by police. They had stayed in touch, and Marcus had been helping him start a foundation in his brother's name to support families affected by police violence. The message contained a photo of the foundation's new office space and a simple, "Thank you." Marcus replied with encouragement and a promise to visit soon. These connections, these relationships built through shared pain and common purpose, had become an unexpected gift in the midst of tragedy. He had discovered a community of people working tirelessly for justice, and he was honored to be part of their efforts. The convenience store clerk who had filmed the incident, whose video had gone viral and sparked the initial outcry, had reached out to Marcus several times. His name was Jason, and he was a film student working part-time to pay for school. Marcus had been so impressed by his quick thinking and bravery in documenting what happened that he had offered to help pay for Jason's education. The young man had been overwhelmed with gratitude, and they had developed an unlikely friendship. Officer Martinez, the second officer who had been at the scene, had also reached out through his attorney. He had resigned from the police department, saying he could no longer be part of a system that allowed such injustices. His message to Marcus had been simple but sincere, an apology for not doing more to stop what happened, and a promise to do better. Marcus had appreciated the gesture, understanding that change required people from within the system to speak up and take action. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the backyard, Marcus felt a sense of peace settling over him. The trauma would always be part of his story, but it did not define him. He had transformed his pain into purpose, his fear into fuel for change, and while there was still so much work to be done, so many battles left to fight, he took comfort in knowing that progress was being made. Jennifer called out that lunch was ready, and Maya and Zoe ran toward the house, laughing and chattering about their game. Marcus followed them inside, pausing at the doorway to look back at the peaceful scene. This was what he was fighting for, these simple, beautiful moments. The right to live without fear. The right to exist without being seen as a threat. The right to buy water and go home to his family. The journey had been painful, but Marcus knew it was far from over. There would be more press conferences, more speeches, more difficult conversations. The trial of Officer Brennan would bring everything back to the surface, forcing Marcus to relive the trauma in vivid detail. But he was ready. He had found his purpose beyond acting, beyond entertainment. He had become an advocate, a voice for the voiceless, a symbol of the fight for justice and equality. That evening, as Marcus tucked Maya and Zoe into bed, Maya asked him to tell them a story. Instead of reaching for one of their usual bedtime books, Marcus began to tell them a tale about a world where everyone was treated with kindness and respect, where differences were celebrated instead of feared, where justice truly prevailed. It was a world that did not yet exist, but it was a world worth fighting for. As he kissed their foreheads and turned out the light, Marcus whispered, "Sweet dreams, my superheroes." Walking back downstairs, Marcus found Jennifer standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood together in comfortable silence. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to make a difference. But tonight they were together, safe and stronger than ever, and that was enough.